No matter where you are in the world or whatever is happening in our world, there is a pattern that repeats itself over and over again with unbalanced precision. This hidden author has more insight into this phenomenon and how we can harness it for ourselves. Guess that author, your host, Lady Poetic Dove. There was a very small village, population 5 people, out in the Pacific Ocean. Most of the villagers were ordinary people living ordinary lives. But out of the 5 of them, there was one villager that was truly extraordinary. We will call him Mr. 20%. So Mr. 20% was gifted in medicine. He spent a lot of time learning all the species of plants on the island and applied his knowledge to help the other 4 villagers. In return, the other 4 villagers gave him food and other items to compensate for his services whenever they fell ill. So Mr. 20% became one of the richest out of the 5 villagers. However, so out of the 4 villagers, let's call him Tipper. He didn't like the fact that 20% had the wealth of all 4 of them, or should I say 80% of the village. So Tipper convinces the other 3 villagers that Mr. 20% is no good, is a thief, and that they should chase him out of the village. The other 3 villagers agreed, and Tipper managed to chase Mr. 20% out of their village, as well as confiscate all of Mr. 20%'s stuff. Tipper and the other 3 villagers were happy for a time, until they all started getting sick. And because they didn't know in depth all the medicines and plants and all of its intrinsic properties, the other 3 villagers started to complain to Tipper that they are sick and they need Mr. 20% back in the village to heal them. Tipper was reluctant, but eventually agreed to find Mr. 20%. Long story short, Tipper finds Mr. 20% living off the Big Island, learning more niche skills in medicine. Mr. 20% eventually forgave Tipper and the other 3 villagers and decided to live back on the island because he grew up with these people. So Mr. 20% healed his 4 villager friends and even gave them the specialized medicine he learned on the Big Island. The specialized medicine helped in making them 5 years younger, and they lived happily ever after. Why am I telling you this convoluted story? That no matter wherever you are in the world, a small minority has a significant impact on the majority. That 80% of resources are almost always controlled by 20% of the people. In our fictitious story, Mr. 20% was in possession of 80% of the villagers' stuff. And when Tipper instigated the removal of Mr. 20%, the entire village suffered. Relating this to our modern world, according to Oxfam, Canada, the richest 0.02% of Canadians possess more wealth than the bottom 80%. In the US, 66.9% of total wealth is owned by the top 10% of earners as of 2023. And it's even worse in some African countries, where in 2021, the Southern Africa's richest 10% held 85% of the total wealth of that region. Now, you might hear people get angry regarding this wealth inequality and you might have heard the phrase eat the rich. But what if I told you that this quote unquote act of eating the rich was tried and failed in human history? Meet the Bolsheviks. They were the definition of eat the rich. They were a Russian political party led by Vladimir Lenin who wanted to get rid of rich people, hence end capitalism, and create a socialist slash communism state where wealth is distributed fairly amongst the people. However, Lenin quickly realized without the incentive for a person to gain a profit, like in a capitalistic society, as well as trying to manually control how resources are given to the masses, people were not making new stuff, neither working harder. Thus, they faced shortages of resources within their society. Now, you may ask, does this mysterious author talk about the Bolsheviks in his or her book? No, but I brought this history lesson to demonstrate that this 80-20 imbalance isn't a theory or a dream or even a fantasy, but a principle based in reality, available for anyone ready to learn and practice. The author does talk about the importance of finding a niche or a specialization that you're passionate about, just like Mr. 20% in our story. Because it is only then when we specialize or find our niche is where we rise from the bottom 80% and enter into the realm of the 20%. Are you able to guess who this author might be? Introducing Richard Koch, author of 80-20 Principle, The Secret of Achieving More with Less. Try not to become a man of success, but a man of value. A man of value will give more than he receives. Be creative, but make sure what you create is not a curse for mankind.